Hello everyone, my name is Tiffany. I'm the Tipsy artist. Today we are going to be painting this beautiful Highland cow, and she is very peaceful and surrounded by butterflies, and I like to think of this as being symbolic of transformation, for lots of wonderful good things coming. So this gives you an example of what I do in my live classes, and then we have a smaller version that we'll be painting today, that goes with our painting kits that we have a traceable for. But I wanted to come on and say hi really quick before we transfer the view. We're going to go ahead and do an aerial view with a close-up of our painting. And here we go. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and switch camera views. And okay. So I'm going to get situated here. It's cold here today, so I've got my little quilt. We're all good. All right. So this gives you an example of all the supplies that we have. We have your painting set. I've got mine opened up and all the tools. The only thing you'll need to get with our painting kit is your bucket of water. It has all of your other supplies. And then I have worked ahead a little bit on the trace. So boy, that kind of blocked a lot. So I'm thinking about that. Okay. All right. So yeah, that should be a little bit better. All right, so I've got my trace here and I've worked ahead. Let me go ahead and peel this up so you can see it. Some helpful hints here. I always tape up here at the top. Your kit has some tape with it, some little washi tape. And I secure the transfer paper first. I just center it right in the middle. And so I've got that down. And I always make sure that the dull gray side faces up and then the shiny side that will do your transfer, this faces the canvas. So again, this is all just centered. Then your kit comes with a pencil. So I use this to go ahead and do a hard line trace. Basically, you just follow every single line that there is and just draw right over the top. And then you'll be set. And then before I completely lift this off of my canvas, I want to be sure that I check all of my work and then I've got every single line done. Because once you lift this off, it's really hard to go back, pretty much impossible to go back and line it up exactly because you can't see through it. So you do want to make sure you get all those lines done, and I've done that. So I'm going to go ahead and take mine off. All right, and then we also have a Sharpie that comes with your kit. So I go ahead and do a hard line over that as well. So that just helps. It provides a nice little shadow underneath the paint in the spots where you need a shadow. And it also really helps preserve your trace. So you worked really hard on this. You don't want to lose it with paint. So it'll stay intact for you. All right, so we've got our model here for you, and then I've got my little plates. Again, this comes with your kit. I do have a little bit of white already on the plate, ready to go. And so the very first thing that we want to go ahead and start with will be our background to begin with. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the Mama brush, and let's go and talk about our brushes really quick. I'm going to put these off to the side since we're done with these tools. So we've got our Mama brush, and then we've got little buddies, got a little flat top there, and then we have little bit. This is what we do our little details with. All right. So here's Mama. Let's go ahead and start with our background. And I've got some of the titanium white. When you do start to pull out your paint here, what you'll find, I've already opened this up, but well, okay, so I've got an extra, so I use reuse, but basically it'll look like a silver foil liner just like that. You'll want to lift that off. It's got a little lip to where you can easily lift it off here too. But definitely lift it off so you can get your paint out of there. And we like to go ahead and start with about a quarter size dollop of the white. And then I will be adding a little bit of my primary cyan blue to this as well. So I'm going to do just a little pea-size amount of that. All right, we're good there. And then I do a little touch of water here. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of the white and then a little touch of that blue, and I'm going to mix that in. And add a little bit of water to this, kind of make the paint a bit more fluid. All right, I also want to have a little bit of gray nearby too. So I'm going to take a little bit of the Mars Black. And then I need to go ahead and lift this off. So we'll get a little example of what this looks like. So we peel that off and then we'll lift this off. And anytime you're done releasing paint from the tube, you always want to make sure and recap so that your paint will stay nice and fresh. I'm going to do another little pea-size amount over there on the plate. Take the same brush, we'll do a little tiny touch of black. Now we've got some really beautiful slate color. Add a little bit of water. All right, and again, a little bit of water helps make that paint really fluid. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start to work this into our background. My painting stroke is going to feel like the letter X over and over and over again. So again, just like a little crisscross back and forth. And then as I'm working in this color, I'll also touch into some pure white and kind of switch that up a little bit. Again, a little bit of pure white, kind of crisscross that in back and forth. And then even a little bit of that pure blue. See, I'm just touching into that too and just kind of crisscross that in. That'll give you some more vibrant blue in the background. We're basically just kind of mixing this in on the canvas. And just keep thinking crisscross back and forth here. Now we're going to get into some cut-in work pretty quickly. Before we do that, again, just keep thinking gentle hand, light hand. You want to also think about your brush being more parallel to the canvas. This will give you a light, gentle touch and allows a lot more of that paint to just rest right on the surface. Again, just crisscross back and forth. And like when I'm putting in this white, I want it to just rest right on top. So I'll crisscross back and forth here. All right, now we need to do some cut-in work. I want to go ahead and let my mama rest in the water so the paint doesn't dry out on the brush. We are using acrylic paint today, and it does set up and dry pretty quickly. So now I'm going to use my little bit brush. That's the smallest brush that we've got. I'm going to go ahead and go into that medium blue, a little bit of blue with the white. Add a little bit of water. And I'm going to do a nice little twirl into that paint. That'll load up the brush, but it also twirls it into a nice fine point. I will use this to go ahead and do some cut-in work around that butterfly so we don't lose that shape. And I have a little bit of overpaint over that antenna. It's okay. We'll rework that back in later, but we've got it in place still. We still see it. So with this brush hold, we're going to hold the brush a little bit more like you would use a pencil. Very traditional hold there. And that just gives us a lot more control to work that in around the shape. Get in those tight corners and just follow that around. All the way around the curves of that little butterfly. And we'll follow the curve of the horn here. And then while I'm going, I'm just going to go ahead and work this in a little bit here too. And I don't have to be super tight around the ears. Just keep that in mind because we've got overpaint that we'll do with the ears. And so you can be kind of loose in that area. But I do want to be a little bit more careful around the butterflies and really make sure and preserve that shape. So again, this is still just that blue and white. And we're still just doing a little bit of that cut in. All right, I'll let a little bit rest. I'm going to go back in with my Mama. Do a quick little dab there. A bit more of that white and that slate and that medium blue. And then we'll start to work this back in, feather in, and blend back in that cut in work that we did with the rest of the background. And then finish out with that little crisscrossing of the stroke. Crisscross back and forth. A little bit of white. Like that white in there. It looks like a little bit of cloud cover happening. Again, just kind of crisscross that back and forth. A bit more water. Okay, around that little horn there and the ear. And you see how that Sharpie's kind of bleeding through right there. So I like that. That helps us. And it's crisscross back and forth. Same thing here, just do a loose cut in around the ear. Again, that's going to be furry and loose, so we can be kind of loose around the edge. Let's get this out a little bit. Again, just keep thinking crisscross back and forth here. And then I can add a little bit of the white. Again, just kind of lightly lay that on over the top. Crisscross that in. And do a little bit of blue in here too. It's kind of fun. It's scary at first, but then you just keep lightly going over the top and little crisscross shapes, and then it softly blends into the background. Lots of repetition, just crisscross back and forth. bit of the black. All right. All right, so we're good on our background there. It's wonderful. We're going to start to have fun with our cow next. I rinsed out my mama. It's dry off. Let's go ahead and rinse out completely now with our little bit brush. And let's go ahead and take our little buddy. We're going to mix up some more of this gray and then the slate too. So we're going to grab a little touch of the white, a little touch of the black. Let's get some nice medium gray happening and a little bit of that blue. Let's grab some water, make that paint more fluid, push back and forth there into that paint. And then we will paint into this surface area. I'm going to hold my little buddy just like you'd hold a pencil. That'll allow that line edge of the brush to work into this shape. Curl all the way up. Okay, it's looking good. And then we'll go do the other side. Do the line all the way up. And we're just holding that brush just like you'd hold a pencil. And that allows you to have the precision of that line edge to go into the shape. And we're going to just start with that medium gray. It's kind of more of a charcoal gray, but has a hint of blue to give it kind of a slate feel. And then we're going to go ahead and touch into a little bit more of the darker black here. And we're going to work that along the bottom edge. And see, we're going to get a nice little shadow. We'll work that all the way up here. And just kind of softly feather that in. Sweep that brush back and forth. Let's do a little bit more of that darker black in here. We're going to do that all along the base. Sweep that all the way up. And then we're going to take the full side of the brush and kind of sweep that into the center to softly blend that a little bit. Sweep that back and forth. All right, really pretty. Let's go ahead and rinse out. Dry off. I'm going to grab a little bit more of that lighter blue. So the white and the blue up here on the plate. And we're going to do some nice full chunky brush strokes of that. So the full flat side of the brush, I take that and work that along the flat side and just do little full strokes of that. Do a little bit more of that up here and up here. Rinse out, dry off, and let's grab some pure white. And again, hold that brush more over to the side and kind of sweep that across that horn. Just quick drags, gentle hand. And some pure white. And you can kind of turn the canvas here a little bit too to get a better angle. Do a bit more of that pure white. Just gonna do like a little chunky section of it. Okay. All right, so we've got little horns down there. And mine are a little different every time I do the painting, so you don't have to have it exactly the same. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and start to go into the fur. Okay, so I've got all my brushes nice and clean here. And let's go ahead and get some fur color. So I'm going to take this off to the side. Take Mama. I want to go ahead and get another dollop of the titanium white. If you're working with your tubes, you want to squeeze out a little bit more of that. And then I want to go ahead and mix up some colors to have them nearby. So let's take some primary yellow. We'll do a little pea-sized amount of that. Let's do some cadmium yellow, another little pea-sized amount. And then we need to mix up some brown. So I've got my cadmium orange. We'll do a pea-sized amount of that over here. And to make the brown, you need to mix Mars black and orange. So Mars black and orange makes brown. So I'll do another little dollop there. And we've got a lot of red and pink happening, so I want to have that off to the side just to have fun to play with it. So there's my cadmium red. Make sure and recap after every use. And then we've got primary magenta. Another little pea-sized amount there. I'm going to take little buddy. There's little buddy. I'm going to mix up our brown. That's a dark brown, but it'll, just so you know, so we add white, and that'll lighten it right back up. See, to a lighter brown, so you can do that too. I don't want this brush to get dried out, so I'm going to go and let it rest in the water. And you know what? I want a little bit of purple nearby too. I'm looking around at all these fun colors we've got. All right. So on the top here, we have a lot of light white and just a hint of that primary yellow and a hint of brown. So I'm going to add those all together. I'll grab a little bit more of my white from over here. And again, you can get more from your tube. And again, that's titanium white. And we're going to do some big sweeps here over the top. So they're going to feel like long curls. So almost like making parentheses, parentheses. That's what it feels like. So I'm going to take that over to the sides. And I can do a little bit of shadow with the brown. Do little bits of shadow in there. And some pure white. Sweep that back in. That highlight over the top. Some nice thick texture for the hair here. Again, a lot of it's going to be those sweeping curves that are going to feel like you're making parentheses over and over again. So I've got that big section done, but I need to go ahead and switch over to a smaller brush. So I'm going to go ahead and let Mama rest, and we'll go back to Little Buddy. So I'm going to rinse out here, dry off a little bit, and then let's go ahead and pull in a little bit of this cadmium red and primary magenta. I'm going to go ahead and sweep this into ears. So big soft curves here, and again, like parentheses, parentheses again. And when you get to the bottom of the ear, you just kind of want to lift off with a light hand. We're getting that first foundational amount of strokes in there. So again, same thing over here, soft curve, curve all the way around, and then lift off with a light hand. And I also want to get, I used all my cadmium orange to mix. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of pure cadmium orange just so I can get some of that orange in there too as a nice little light highlight. Again, soft curves here. Soft curves here. And even if that softly blends into the white, which it is, it's going to go to a lighter pink, which is still really fabulous. I'm going to come in around this little eye. You definitely want to be very careful about cutting in around the eye. Now we do have it sharpied in. I'm going to go ahead and warm mine up a little bit here. I'll take my little bit brush, do a little twirl with the water and that primary magenta and the cadmium red, and do a little bit of a twirl. And then I'm going to take this around that shape. Get those darker colors in there first. This little white part, that's more of like a little eyelash, so we're going to leave that alone. This around here. And then we're definitely going to come in and around, back in with more light white highlights here in a little bit, but I'm trying to get the base of the darker color in here first. Pull this up. And you can always make your cow a little bit more traditionally brown too, so that's certainly an option. Working that back in. A little bit more water, help make the paint more fluid. Did some soft strokes here into the top. And we'll do some little strokes crisscross back and forth above the nose area. I'm going to grab a little bit of orange in here too and warm that up a little bit. Kind of dipping into a little bit of the primary magenta, cadmium red, a little bit of that cadmium orange. Lots of little tiny strokes. Have a little bit of a soft curve to them. And then I also go into my brown a little bit here too. And I'm going to go ahead and work in a little bit of shadow. I'll let little buddy rest there. So bring in a little bit of that brown. Got a little bit of a shadow happening in here too. Getting a little bit of water as well to help make that paint a little bit more fluid. Work in those soft little hairs. More of a darker shadow coming in through here. A bit of a dark shadow happening here. We're trying to reinforce the shape of that face. So a little bit more brown. We've got a little bit of shadow happening in the ears too. So it's definitely still just kind of repeating the same shape with those soft parenthesis shapes, soft curves, but just working in a little bit of that shadow in the ear. And just a little touch of water kind of helps that softly blend in there over the top. And this is that brown we mixed up, which again, the brown is the black and the cadmium orange. Get a little of that shadow in there, and we'll come back in and bring in more light, but I'm just kind of working in a little bit more of those shadows. And while I've got my brown mixed up here, my little bit brush, I'm going to go ahead and make a hard line around underneath that nose shape, and underneath this mouth area here. We've got some dark shadows in here, so we'll go ahead and work those in. Some water. Push that through. And that brown, we've got a lot of shadow to work in. Do little touches of that. Shadow coming up from the base here. Again, you can add a little bit of water that helps make that paint more fluid and easily go on to your canvas. We'll do a little bit of primer magenta with the brown now. And we'll work that in as a shadow here at the base. Do our cut and work around that lovely little butterfly. Okay, we've got our primer magenta and our brown. Remember, our brown was orange and black. Still have a lot of that mixed up, and then I added some primer magenta to it. So I'm going to do that cut and work around this with our little bit brush. See, and once we get that more challenging cutting work done, then we can have a lot more fun just kind of playing with the bigger brushes and those bigger, bolder strokes. Have that work in. That primer magenta. Let's work in some more of that shadow, the brown. It's out. Now let's go ahead and pull back in our mama, and we'll do some broad color as a base and a foundation. So I'm going to go ahead and get some more Mars Black here. Just going to do a little bit of the undercoat of darker color. We'll do a little bit of the black mixed in with that brown that we had earlier. And I'm just going to go ahead and work some of this in. Let's add a little bit of white to it for a little bit of a dark gray. I don't want to lose the shape of my cow here. There's going to be a lot of like abstract floral work that will come in. Add a little bit more of the white here on this side. a lighter gray coming into my sky plate. Just use that space. Okay, we're just trying to get a nice loose amount of dark base to work over the top. Well, I'm sorry, under the bottom. This is going to be like an undercoat. And then this way it'll be easy to have that in place. And then we'll start to do a lot of floral work over the top of this. All right, so again, more charcoal gray here. And then let's just work in right now we've got that nice shadow work done. All right, really pretty. Let's go ahead and rinse out. And then let's go ahead and work in some beautiful warm tones here. I'm gonna do some orange and some cadmium orange. And just a teeny amount of white. Help that cover better. And I'm gonna go ahead and do just a nice overpaint here. Get this worked in to the base. Nice foundation work here. We have our cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, and a little bit of that brown. We're just sweeping that into our foundation. All right, really pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse out here. And then let's go back to our little buddy and some of that pure white. And let's go ahead and we're going to hold the brush a little bit more over to the side now, and we're going to sweep on that white right over the top here. It's a nice texture. Gentle hand and white and little buddy. And we're just going to sweep on a bit more of that white paint right over the top. It's kind of thick. And just let it rest right on top here. Really light, gentle hand. And again, soft curves. Just getting the big chunky parts of it done again right over the top. And we're going to switch directions. And we're coming to this side, we'll curve this way. We come to this side, we'll curve this way. Okay, oh, you know what? I've got a little bit of went in wrong. I'm gonna do a little bit more of that thick sweeping white right over the top here too. Again, light hand. That brush kind of drag across the surface area. More of that white there, soft touches of it. All right, let's rinse out. We're going to go back in with our little bit brush and a little bit of water and some more of that white. A little twirl into that paint. And this is when we can kind of do a little more delicate brush strokes right over the top. You can even do little tiny touches of blue in there too, which is kind of fun. And just little accents of that. Touches of purple when you're doing a little bit of blue is kind of fun too. So there's going to be a lot of like little play in between the darks and the lights. You can feel free to go back and forth between your primary magenta and your reds. And then you can always come back in with your whites over the top too. Just back and forth here. Just cross that. And then we have a little bit of that fun little eyelash that comes in over the top of the eyes. So we want to do that. We've got it in our trays, but we definitely want to do it with our little bit brush here too. So we want to make sure it's nice and clean and get any excess water out here to begin with. We don't want to have it drip. And then I'm going to take a little bit of our pure white. Let's get a little bit more here. Grab a little bit of water now to make that paint more fluid. Real easy to move. See, it's becoming a lot more liquid filled. So we're going to go and do a little twirl. Nice fine point there. And then we're going to act like we're putting on a little bit of makeup almost. It's almost like doing eyeliner in the morning, but for a cow, their little eyelashes go in the same direction as the eyeliner. So it's just a soft curve that follows the eye because their eyelashes go down. Let's do one more here on this side. And one more here on this side. Very pretty. All right. I'm just going to do a few more little accents here on the ears. Since I've got some white, I'm going to do a little bit more highlights here. Go back and play. A little bit of that orange. Pick up a little more of that cadmium red. Soft curves. So you can see it's lots of repetition and going back over with different layers of color. Really building in those beautiful layers. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get a layer of color down on the nose now. All right, so we've got our little touch of primary yellow and our white. We're going to mix those two together. And a little touch of the brown. So I just kind of want to get to a nice khaki color here, but then I'm going to add in more white to really lighten that up. All right, so recap on that. We want a dollop of the white, a little dollop of that primary yellow. And of course, that looks like a real pale yellow, and I want it to be more of like a khaki tan. So I added just a touch of that brown, and we mix up our brown with the black and the orange. So I've got this khaki that's emerging here on this side, but that I wanted that to be really light. So I added more white to that. And I'm going to add a little bit of water to make it more fluid and do a little twirl into that paint. And then I'm going to go ahead and just work this into the top of the nose area. And then we want to come all the way around here in those soft curves. Be sure to leave you those nostrils in place. A soft curve around here. All right, now in the center, it becomes a lot more pink. So we're going to pick up, I'm going to keep my brush loaded with that same color we were using for that outer edge, but now I'm going to pick up a lot more of that primary magenta to mix into that. Let's add a little bit more white because I want it to be more of like a soft baby pink. So I added more white to make a lighter pink here. Let's add a little bit of water to move that paint around, a little twirl, because I want a nice fine point. And then I will start to work this in right over the top in between those nostrils there and do a soft little curve right in between. Almost looks like a tiny little smiley face in the middle. And then we'll go around the shape there. So soft curve here, it kind of feels like a little parentheses and then another little parentheses. There's soft curve down through here in the middle. Soft curve here, soft curve here. And then we'll go ahead and work in that light pink all through the middle of this section. Let's take that pink right in here too. In here as well. And we can do a little touch of it right in through here too as a base. We'll darken this up later, but right now that's a nice little base. All right, now we're going to touch into a little bit of the cadmium red. And we're going to work in a little bit of that cadmium red into over the top of this baby pink on this side. It's going to feel like you make a little parentheses and work into that shape a little bit there, and then do the same thing here on the other side, little parentheses, but I'll switch directions on this side. And it's softly blending in over the top of that baby pink. And then we'll also sweep this up through a little bit more of that cadmium red, and we're going to sweep it just kind of going across back and forth. So soft curves right through the middle. I'll swish back and forth and softly blend over the top of that baby pink. Take it all the way down. And then a little touch here over the top as well. Rinse out, dry off. Then we're going to pick up some of that pure white here. But I want some that has a little bit of water in it, or you can add water to it. Again, you want it to be very fluid. And we want a little highlight of light here. So we're going to do a little touch and sweep across the top here. And then on the same thing on the other side, a little sweep there of white. Then we also want just a teeny tiny little touch of white just underneath the nostril here. So it's just a little tiny curved touch here and then curved touch here. It's a little soft curve there. And if you did happen to do any overpaint over your black that was Sharpied in, you can retouch. You need to let it completely set up and dry and cheat with your Sharpie later. And if you use the Sharpie for that, you just have to make sure the paint's dry or else it will just kill your Sharpie. And then I'm going to go ahead and go into got a little bit of this pure black, so I can do a little twirl into that. And mine's still in good shape, but I can do a little touch right over the top just to make sure that the last thing that touched the canvas here was actual paint, and it gives that paint finish over the top of the Sharpie. And you can do the same thing here with the little eyes. Make sure those are blackened in again. And if for some reason you blackened in your little reflective light, that little eye sparkle, real easy way to fix that again, use your pencil and just go right into the white paint. So you see you have a little teeny tiny little dot of white paint. And then you can come right back in over the top and just do a little bit of light right there. Right over the top. Right there. So that's another way to dot back in that eye sparkle as well. A fun little trick there. Let's see here. And we've got a little bit more. We can leave this as is, or you can add in a little bit more like lavender, some fun other colors in here. So add a little bit of white to my purple. And I'm going to do a little bit of shadow with that lavender here. Just kind of follow that a little bit. Little chunks of color. And now we can start to play with some of those vibrant colors over the top here too. Get more white and purple. We're just going to do quick little chunks on the side of the brush. Give us some cadmium red. Just kind of a little bit more plain up here. Reinforcing that line. And I picked up a little bit more brown to go around this little shape. Make sure our little face is still defined. Go back in a little more of that primer magenta. Do some like little fur-like strokes over the top. More cadmium red, and do some more of that over the top. And all those little fur-like strokes are soft little strokes. And if you want to lighten up, you can come back in with a little bit more of that cadmium orange, kind of lighten up. And tiny little strokes, varying each direction. So I'm pulling back in a bit more of that orange, kind of lighten up a little bit again. You can even come back in with way more white too and work that back in over the top. Just really pretty. And still using a little bit brush for that. And light hand, holding the brush a little more parallel to the canvas. That just allows you to have real thick, chunky amounts just kind of left right on top. And remember to take the brush to alternate sides, kind of switching it up a little bit. A little bit more up here. Again, I have more white highlights on mine, but if you want to pull in, if you're more of a fan of just the traditional brown, you can certainly do that too. Right, now, I'm rinsed out. I'm going to come in with more highlight color over the base of the fur here because we've got more play work to do here too. So I'll reload up with some more cadmium red and more primary magenta here and more orange. And we'll be using our little buddy a lot more now for just some chunky, fun play here in the fur. And you want to think more like holding the brush more on the side and do light drags down to help make kind of a chunky texture look happening. And do a little bit of yellow in there. This is a little bit more of that blending actually on the canvas. So just kind of, but it's a lot of just little chunks of color that's just going to rest right on top too. Cadmium yellow, that cadmium orange. I think soft curves. And just quick little touches on the side of the brush. just to have nice little bits of chunky texture that rest right on top. And always have a little bit of a soft curve as you kind of apply that color, and then just kind of pull and then lift off with a light hand. And up here through the middle, it kind of feels like you make a little bit of a V in there with color. Pull that down. A little bit more of that yellow right into the top. And here in a little bit, we're going to have a lot of flower overlap that will happen too. I'm going to add a little bit more white here off to the side so I can push that into my orange, make a little bit more of that peach. Soft fur-like strokes that kind of lift off. I'll take it kind of up, do a little bit of a pull, and then lift off with a light hand to give little fur-like strokes. Again, soft curve here. More of that pure white. Quick little touch of that, let that kind of rest right there. Yellow. It's just very playful now, lots of color coming in quick little chunks. And you really just want those chunks to kind of remain. So I do quick little swipes with the brush and let those little chunks of color just rest. Let that texture rest there. A little bit more white up in here. Little swipes of white. Same thing here. Bits of white to just kind of rest in there too. Soft curves for that fur. All right, and now we can start really playing too with our floral look. So lots more of the, I'm going to grab another little touch of the white. And that's our titanium white. And I'll pull this into that primary magenta. And I've still got my little buddy brush here. And I'm just going to do some quick little chunky pulls back and forth. Almost like you're making those little letter X's again, but we're just going to pull that down. Just kind of crisscross those back and forth here into the background. It's almost like our little cow is just in a field of flowers. And these are all abstracted around the cow. So again, white and primary magenta. We're just going to crisscross in a little flower field here. This is just the first layer of floral. So we're going to start with that pink first and just kind of crisscross that in. Really pretty. And then let's use our white and our purple. So I'm going to grab a little bit more of that white here. And I know we've got primary magenta on there, but it plays really well with the purple. So we can work that in, and it'll just blend right in. So we've got a lighter lavender there. So I can kind of now pull in some of that lavender, and even some of that pure purple can be a little bit of a dark shadow. And just think little crisscrosses back and forth in there. And if you pull up a little bit of that pure purple, it just looks like a darker shadow. Crisscross that in. And forth. All right, and do a quick rinse here and add some blues in there as well. So still using my little buddy, we're going to come in with a little bit of that blue and the white. Do little quick chunks of that in there. That makes a nice little shadow, also a little bit of color, but a colorful shadow, so it's really pretty. Rinse out, dry off. Now we can come back in with a little bit of the cadmium red and just do little touches of that cadmium red right over the top. Again, just think lots of repetition and just little quick touches of that can go and just rest, almost like a little bit of floral work, just right over the top. And it's really just a little touch of the brush. Just want those to rest right on top there. And grab a little bit more of that primer and magenta. And the white with that. We can do some, really big, just bigger sections of it. Some bigger flowers in there, bigger pulls, so that it's not all the same shape, just adding some variety in size a little bit here too. So we've got some big flowers that come in over the top. So like a big parenthesis stroke that can come in. All right. And remember, you can keep, I'm going to be adding to this background. You can add a lot of different colors here too. Let's do one more color in here. This is very pretty. A little bit of the Viridian. I'm going to do this on this other plate here. So Viridian and a little bit of white. It's very lovely. Even a little bit of blue in there kind of pulls it to like a turquoise color, which we can add a little bit of that as well. And then a little pea-sized amount of the blue to make more turquoise. Let's add a little more white. All right, that's really pretty. So you can do quick little sections of this in that background too. That's also really pretty. And just real quick little touches, make it real loose and textural. All right, now let's add a little bit of color into our butterflies, rather. All right, rinsed out little buddy. You want to make sure he's nice and clean. Got to save those brushes. All right, let's go back in with our little bit brush, and we need some more cadmium red and more primary magenta. Let's go ahead and get some purple out here too, because we will need that here in a second. I see some of that coming up. All right, so a little bit here, and I'm going to mix up my primary magenta and my red. Do that little twirl, and you can just paint right into, let's grab a little bit of water, makes that paint more fluid. We can paint right into that butterfly shape. And the other side. And it's a bit more primary magenta on this one, so we'll lay that in on one side and then the other. Again, still using your smallest brush a little bit to do this work. Now on this one, I want a lighter pink, so I'm going to grab a little bit of white over here from my other plate. Work that in for my lighter baby pink. I'm going to grab a little bit of water, help make that paint more fluid, easier to work with. Do a little twirl, get a nice fine point. And work that into the butterfly shape there. And another side. Now this one's more purple, so I'm going to take a little touch of white and add a little bit of that into the purple to make a lighter lavender shade. Let's grab a little bit of water, make that paint more fluid. Do a little twirl with the end of our brush, and then work that into that shape. And the other side. Soft curve here and fill that in. Right. A little bit of water, twirl. I want to go ahead and do our little antennas here. And I still see my little trace peeking through to help me out, but it's just a letter V right in through there. And I want to use the purple for a little twirl, nice fine point. And it's a bit more pressure for a little ball, and then pressure, and then lift off with the light hand, come towards that center. Little twirl, nice fine point, and just think little V middle. And then let's see here. I want those to be a little bit lighter, so do a little bit more of that lighter pink. Twirl, and we'll do that little V right in the center. And then I want to add a little bit of black now, a little bit of water in with our black. Twirl into that, nice fine point. And we can make the body. And again, think parentheses, parentheses, and just fill that in. And then parentheses, parentheses, fill that in for that center line. Again, work a little bit black into the paint, twirl it in, nice fine point, and then parentheses, parentheses for that center. And then parentheses, parentheses, and fill that in. Now we've got our yellow body butterfly down here. So I need more. My cadmium yellow. Pea-sized amount there. That's a big pea. Okay. And then a little bit, nice and clean. We're going to do a little bit of cadmium yellow, a little touch of white with that too to help make it a bit more opaque. And then I will work this into that shape. And then the other side. I'm going to kind of feather out. So holding the brush more over to the side will get us a nice thick coat of paint right over the top. So I'll finish off with that. So do something a little different on this one. I'm going to do a little bit of a pink body. So I'm going to do parentheses, parentheses. I like that one. Rinse out. I'm going to go back into that cadmium yellow. And I want to do a little V right here in the center for the little antenna. Right. So I'm going to do a little bit more shading on the nose here. Got my little bit brush. It's all clean. I want just a teeny amount of purple, but I'm going to add a little bit of water to that. And more water. I'm just going to kind of lightly graze over the top here. A little bit more shading. I'm going to go right up through the center. All right. I think we are done. I'm trying to do a little quick touches. All right, now an optional step that you can do too is palette knife work, and it's kind of like buttering toast. You can also achieve the same effect with a brush as well, just by holding it more, like I said, like parallel to the canvas and just letting it kind of drag on the side. So there's good control that way too. But if you do use a palette knife, then you can just pick up little chunks of paint on the side here and just kind of lightly sweep just like this. And that'll create some nice little texture right over the top. So that's another little fun thing that you can do. Very similar to what we were doing with the side of the brush before, but you can also play with that as well. And just pick up little chunks of paint and just do quick little drags over the surface area. So, and to kind of show you what can be achieved with texture, I'm going to show you with a little bit of white that's really obvious on the sky here. So I'm going to do a little bit of white, kind of crisscross it back and forth here on my plate. And then up here, you can kind of drag it over the top. Kind of crisscross that a little bit. Just kind of create some nice little texture. I'm going to play with that a little bit. A little bit of cloud cover happening there, just teeny amounts. So just something a little bit optional and fun to play with as well. All right, come back in with my little bit. I keep discovering little things I want to do. All right, so a little bit brush, a little bit more of the white, but I want to get a little bit more water into that, make it quite a bit more translucent. Do a little twirl, and then I want just a little hint of like white accent right over the curve of the nose here, and then here. All right, I think we are done. Now, one other step I'll tell you is signing your masterpiece. I like to do mine with a Sharpie when it's dry, because that's just a really nice way to make sure that you can do cursive and it stays really precise. But again, the trick is has to be on dry paint or else it'll just kill this Sharpie if it hits the wet paint. And we want to make sure that you get to keep your materials in good shape. But if you do want to paint on and get that really tiny detail, it's very much like how we did the antennas. So you definitely want to add a lot of like water to the paint, make it very fluid. Do a little twirl. And then you can definitely sign your masterpiece this way too. Or like little initials, it's kind of fun. So that's another option for you as well. I think we are done with this beautiful painting for right now. And I'm so glad y'all joined me today. Again, all the tools that you need for this project are on my website, tipsyartist.com. And I think we are barely making it in time to stop before the winter light comes in. So phew, just made it. All right. So again, thank y'all so much for joining me. I had so much fun painting with y'all today. It's always very relaxing and a pleasure. And if you have any questions, please leave those for me in the comments, and I'll be happy to get back with you just as soon as possible. And y'all have a beautiful and blessed day. Much love to y'all. Toodles.